Today, I want to welcome Dennis Meador. He is the founder of the Legal Podcast Network, but that's like a gross understatement. He's a super entrepreneur. Never have gotten a clear count on the number of businesses that he's either start or grown, but he did say that he grew three businesses from 3 million, from 1 million to 3 to 5 million in less than 3 years. And he's been doing remote teams for a long time, has 30 people placed around the world, and is truly an expert on growing businesses. And that alone is a good reason to have this conversation. When I originally saw him, the thing that caught my attention is he markets in a really hard area. He markets attorneys. And so I was just curious how you do marketing in a tough field. And so I think there's a lot here that we're going to cover today. Really looking forward to this. Stay tuned in. It's going to go fast. And I can tell you just based off our conversation in the green room, it's going to be a really neat conversation. Dennis, welcome.
Thanks for having me on, my friend.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't even know where to start. I every time I'd say something, you'd hit me with something else. Why don't we go back to you market attorneys, and but you started off working on a theology degree.
Yeah, so I was at a small unaccredited Bible college in the Ohio Valley, Ohio West Virginia Valley, and I so kind of the way things started for me, oldest of six kids, 18 years old. I turn 18 on Wednesday. I graduate high school on Friday. On Sunday, I'm in Ohio at a college with $20, and my dad says, "Good luck, kid." And that's kind of how adulthood started for me. Now, I'd already had businesses since I was 14, knew how to make money. So it wasn't really a scary situation for me. But typically, that's not the way most people start life. I get there and, I'm going to school and I have a job as like a desk clerk making minimum wage. And it fit for what I needed because I could do schoolwork. But I had a buddy who was working at a telemarketing company for $9 an hour. And I was like, $9 an hour, that's like twice what I'm making. So I went over there, started working, did really well, and noticed this group of guys who were in their like 30s and 40s selling ads in police magazines. And they were all making like $30 an hour. And I was like, I want to be on that team. So I go over there, do really well, actually become the manager of that department. I'm 18, 19, I guess I'm 19 years old, managing guys my age now in their 40s. Took the department and saw about a 50% increase. And that kind of got me into the concept of like, wow, there's a lot of money in this marketing thing. So somebody recruited me to sell advertising in hospital patient handbooks, traveled around for about a year doing that. Now I'm 20 years old, making over 100 grand back in the late 90s. And that's how I kind of jumped into the industry of being in marketing. And then I was in the industry. I was selling, ads on paper, as we did at that time. But I saw the internet coming and I'm like, I want to get into this internet thing. And I got recruited by a company that was selling advertising to attorneys, mostly personal injury attorneys at the time. And I was like, I can try this. So I jumped in, I tried it, did really well at it, and made really good money, had freedom because they were based out of Chicago. I lived in a different part of the country at the time. And I learned very quickly that I like selling to attorneys. And most people are like, why on earth would you like selling to attorneys? So here's the thing with me. Like for me, sales, it had a bad connotation to me growing up. And I won't get into the reasoning behind it, but I thought if you sell for a living, that means you lie for a living.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be that person. Like I found a lot of merit in just being brutally honest, sometimes to a fault. But in working with attorneys, what I learned is you didn't have to use the manipulative ways of selling with them. You didn't have to appeal to their emotions and say, well, what kind of difference would it make if I could bring you 5 customers a month? Like how would your life change? And all those things that I was learning getting into sales that I hated.
Oh my goodness. I was looking at a playbook, not one of my playbooks, but somebody else's playbook. And I'm
Hmm.
reading through the questions, and I'm like gagging because It's all those things, the same old sales questions that have been out there for years. Well, if you don't change, what impact will that have on you? And, you know,
Yeah.
and it's all of that. And I just think I can't do that. I've tried that and I don't do it well, but I just have to believe that here in 2025, people have already heard all those questions. And as soon as they hear that question coming, they're like,
Yep.
oh, geez, another salesperson.
Yep, exactly. And so like for me, the thing I love about attorneys, you can just be forthright with them. They don't want fake rapport. If you use logic, they don't get emotional. You could say, well, have you considered this? And what about this? And, if you look at it from this angle and then you give them this illustration, and they'll be like, yeah, you're right. Okay, well, let's give it a try. So that's what I've always liked about working with attorneys is yes, they can be hard nosed, but if you kind of keep yourself on their level and you use logic and you don't try to be fake with them. They see right through it and they'll respect that and they'll want to do business with you. Like my opener literally with attorneys is, listen, I'm not going to try to act like I'm your new best friend. I'm not going to look for something in the background and go, "Oh, you have a picture frame. I have picture frames too. We should be new best friends." Like, that whole like fake rapport thing. I said, I'm going to get into the thing. We're going to get into this product. I'm going to show you what we do, how we do it, how it benefits you. If you like what we do, great. If not, we'll part ways. It'll be 20, 25 minutes of your time. Fair enough. And they're like you just see the pressure just go, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
finally. Like somebody's being real with me. So that's why I like attorneys. That's why I've liked attorneys for decades now is you can have real conversations. And sure, sometimes they're going to be tough with you, but you get to be tough right back with them.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I think more and more people, we're living in an age of authenticity, and I think more and more people appreciate that honesty. I mean, one of the things I've used recently, and it's not a gimmick, it's reality. I get on a sales call and I'll just say, "Hey, look, I'm assuming that you're not excessively bored and just wanted to waste an hour of your day. What's the problem you're trying to solve?"
Right.
And I've had people, they just kind of laugh and they're like, well, that's an interesting way of putting it, but it's honest. I mean, who has an hour in their day or a half hour in their day to waste? And why not just acknowledge what everybody knows and say, let's get down to it. What are you trying to do?
Exactly. Yeah. And so yeah, that's definitely been the biggest reasoning. And they have money.
Yeah.
I mean, like I've sold realtors and it's like you can call 1,000 realtors and 999 of them are broke, right? They just got their license and they haven't sold a house yet and they've been doing it for 2 years and you're trying to sell them a, whatever package of marketing. And chances are, unless they are supported by their partner financially, in which case then you got to get the partner in and the partner bought in, so there's just so many different niches where I felt like I can always go to attorneys. I can always make money with attorneys because they have money for the most part, and I can relate to them. So that's who I work with.
Well, and something you said that I thought is really key is you said they're tough, but it lets you be tough back with them. I don't think people should shy away from tough clients. Now, if they're tough and just unrealistic, yeah, okay,
There's a difference between tough-minded and abusive.
yeah. I mean, I used to have Siemens in Germany as a customer when I was marketing semiconductors. They were tough, but they were always reasonable. And and like you said, you just kind of lay it out. You have an honest discussion. There was one time I had to deliver some bad news, and they thanked me. They said, "This is how we like to do business." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, crap." I'm sitting there crapping myself because I'm delivering bad news, and they're appreciative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, even with my clients, like we lay out guidelines and we say, listen, like this is how we work. If you see us as your vendor that you get to abuse, this is not going to work. We're partners. We need a little bit of your time. We're going to deliver this product. And even like at the beginning of this year, I fired almost 20% of my clients because they were taking up too much bandwidth and not treating my team properly. And so I said, bring me all the bad clients. Let's tell me the stuff that they're doing, And I was like, yep, get rid of them. Oh, they said that to you? Oh, they treated so and so like that? Get rid of them. And we sent a bunch of breakup emails. And we had like a handful of them beg to come back. Please, can you? And we're just like, I'm sorry. Like, I think I let one of them come back, and they're basically on probation to be our
Yeah.
client in how they treat the team.
Yeah.
So, you definitely, there is that line between having tough clients and having abusive clients.
Yeah. Well, good for you. So, one of the reasons I was really interested in having you on the podcast is, I mean, I'm a marketer and I look at marketing attorneys and I'm just like, gee, that's a tough problem. It's a problem I don't know how to solve. And, normal people need an attorney once every 5 years or every 10 years or something like that. Um, and and I just don't know how to market that on a reasonable budget, to help somebody grow their business when most of their customers only need them, or most of their clients only need them once every 5 or 10 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the clients are definitely there. It's the big problem in the industry is the over commoditization because of Google and all of the different directories. So, I mean, I talked to guys who 10, 15 years ago, they were making 450 an hour. They're at like 325 an hour now because the industry has become so competitive. Our school systems, be a doctor or a lawyer, be a doctor or a lawyer, and that's still like coming up, not so much now. The number one thing that kids want to be now is influencers, but that's true. Look it up. Like the stats are there. Like, but 10, 15 years ago, that's what all kids were told. You want to grow up and be successful, become a doctor or a lawyer. And so we still have like the residual effect of that. And so there are a lot of attorneys out there, but there's a lot of cases out there. And you'd be surprised at, I get into, even especially with this product, has brought me niches where I'm just like, this guy does this full time. Like, there's one guy, all he does is, or his firm does, is he works with employers who want to self insure their own people because it costs too much to use like Blue Cross Blue Shield, whatever. So they create their own insurance plans. And he basically structure. I'm like, that's your full. He's like, oh yeah, like we're busy, and so like we do a podcast and a show about like creating your own insurance plans for this like very very narrow niche of people. So you go from that all the way to like you think about like a local family attorney, right? Like take Austin, for example. I would say in the Austin market, conservatively speaking, there's, let's just say, 1,000 attorneys that will take your divorce. And I
Yeah.
think that's a, fairly decent number to say. So if you're just showing up on Google and you have a website that says, hey, I am so and so, I went to this school, I won this mock trial, and I've been doing it 10 years, and I can do custody issues, and I like all the websites say that. So now we've got to get into points of differentiation or thought leadership. And that's what we really focus on is thought leadership. Most attorneys will tell you, especially the ones that are a little more seasoned, 10 plus years, they'll say, listen, if I can get somebody to sit across from me, I'll win their business. The problem is no one wants to sit across from an attorney anymore. They want to go to their website, they want to check out their social media, they want to see who they are. So who they are offline now has to be reflected online. Online is no longer just a business card. It is literally a reflection of who you are, the expertise that you have, the way that you're going to treat the client. And if you don't reflect that, then you're going to get passed up for the person who does. And by doing that, now you've separated yourself from among the fray. And the first question is no longer, well, what are your rates? It becomes, well, listen, I listened to your podcast. I watched some of your videos on your site. I read your content and some that answered a lot of my questions. What is it going to take for me to be able to work with you? And that's a totally different question. And so it's really about how you frame the attorney, or really in any competitive industry that's about thought leadership. How are you framing them to the potential client that over 80, it's like 82% of people solely use the internet to find their attorney. So if 82% of people are solely using the internet, what are you doing to separate yourself from among that fray of people that are saying exactly what you're saying?
Years ago, I found out I was getting divorced the day I got served.
Okay.
And I had to go shop for an attorney. And I just remember thinking at the time, I'm like, I'm making one of the most important purchases I'll make in life. And I have no expertise in making this purchase. I have no way of evaluating who's good and who's bad. And I'm emotionally in the worst possible place to make a clear-headed decision. It was crazy.
Yeah, it's I've been through a divorce as well. I certainly understand that. I use this illustration with attorneys because attorneys will say things like, "Oh, all you marketers, you're a bunch of thieves," and those things like that. And I'll say, "Well, first of all, pot calling the kettle black when we're talking about industry. So calm down on the rhetoric, buddy." And they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, you're right, you're right." And then I'll say, "Listen, my brother got divorced a year before I did. He went out and he got like a $30,000 attorney. We made about the same amount of money. And he went out, I got a $30,000 attorney. By the end of it, he's living on my uncle's couch. He's making well into six figures, but he's living hand to mouth because of the divorce and all the money that he was paying and everything else. So when I got a divorce a year later, I didn't say, well, all lawyers are a bunch of ripoff artists. There's no use to use them. I just didn't go to his lawyer. I got a different lawyer that I researched and found out about. And it's the same thing in any industry, right? There's good actors, there's bad actors. And so yeah, with lawyers, like, what we try to do is, your situation's a little bit different, but a lot of people, they either know the divorce is coming or they're the ones going towards the divorce, right? So like, for example, what we'll do is we'll have a session where we talk about, like, okay, let's say you want high asset divorces. So what are some questions that you get, and what are some fears that you get? And they'll be like, okay, one of their biggest things is like, what happens to like the non-essential assets that we own, like a second home. So we'll literally ask them a question in a podcast. What happens to a second home during a divorce? And then they answer, well, blah, 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 blah. Well, then we take and we build, we put that in the podcast, we put that on the website, and we build a little video with it, and then we have it show up and we put it on YouTube. Now we have a chance for it to show when, like, let's say that you're typing in and you're like, okay, what happens to to our second house during the divorce? Now all of a sudden you see this little podcast, takes you down to this attorney's website. He's answering all these questions. He focuses on high net worth individuals, and he's assuaging your fears. He's giving you clarity, or she. And now this helps you make a better decision because there's a differentiator. You feel like this person speaks not just to the issue of divorce, but to the very specific issue of a high asset divorce, which is different than, hey, let's split the debt down the middle.
And you just said something, and in a way you glossed over it, and I want to make sure people hear this. Because a lot of business owners think, oh, geez, I don't have a lot of time to create content. And what you're talking about, what you just described, you create one piece of content, and then you, the marketer, is
Mm-hmm.
taking that one piece of content and using it in like three, four, five different places.
Oh, you have no idea. So if they do one show a month, we're getting ready to launch 2.0. We put out 10 to 12 shorts or reels, and we'll put them on, we hook them up where we're in a program called Metricool, where we can distribute to like all the different, Meta platform, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Twitter, Pinterest. I mean, you name it. If the social media exists, we can plug it into this system and do all their social media on top of it. Then we also do 10 audiograms. Then we also create 2 to 3 pages of content for their website. So for 30 minutes of their time, they're getting a month's worth of social media content and a full podcast that's put on 25 audio outlets and 3 or 4 video outlets.
Wow. And that's, you talked about attorneys being rich or wealthy or whatever. They have money. And, it reminded me of something. I got an email from Alex Ramosi once, and he had such an interesting breakdown. He said, poor people buy things, lazy people buy distraction, ambitious people buy training, and rich people buy time.
Exactly.
And we all want the rich clients. And so we just 30 minutes. You give me 30 minutes of your time. You don't even have to prepare, just show up. We're going to hit record.
Yep. We send you the questions ahead of time. We provide the host. You literally just show up and talk about what you talk about every day.
Yeah. I love that content strategy.
Yeah, it's working well for us. Our attorneys love it. We're seeing growth. We're starting to, it's a really exciting concept, and even more so. I'm very fortunate that I've had some really good people buy in to my vision. I just took almost 6 weeks off, and I mean, I'm a year old as a business. But we did our honeymoon, went to Thailand and Bali, and then I came back and I was sick. And so I think I might have even had to reschedule this podcast if I remember correctly. Maybe not. But the whole time we still ran, clients fulfilled, sales happening, business running. And it's just like there's no better feeling as a business owner than when you can step away for pleasure purposes and then sick purposes, and yet still see things running right. The reports look good, the clients are happy. Matter of fact, clients are emailing me, your team is great, I love working with you guys, blah blah blah. And it's just like, wow, like, there's no better feeling as a business owner to me than that right there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I love that. So then again, the question is, let's say if we were, I had my divorce in 2025, how would I encounter this content? Because I just sat down and just started searching, and I tried calling a few people, and this is before I even knew who Becky Beaver was. Um,
So yeah, there's two types of searching. There's your generic like divorce attorney Austin, Texas. And those are your kind of like lower thinkers, if you will. They're kind of like they just want, it's almost like restaurant near me. They're just looking for convenience. They're not necessarily looking for the best. But the other type of researcher, which it is a lower percentage, but it's a higher quality individual, they research their situation. They want to understand their situation before they seek counsel. So that's where we get into question based search. That's why we do these 7 to 10 question podcasts on very specific subjects, because now we can answer these. We do a session on custody. What's the difference between joint custody and split custody? As a father, am I most likely to just get every other weekend, or how can I, this? And so, like, we go in and we answer these questions, and then we take the answers from the podcast and we create short videos, and that scales on YouTube because YouTube's owned by Google. Then we put the content on the website. And I always tell people custom content on a continual basis that keeps people on the page will always kill it in the algorithm. I don't care what changes get made. Keyword stuffing, come and gone. You know, Tons of backlinks, including black cat backlinks, come and gone. Where people, I forget what it was called, but they did all the writing in clear font to where it was like keyword stuffing, but it was like mystery keyword stuffing, where they would put a bunch of content on a page, but we couldn't see it, but the search engines could see it. So there's all these little tips and tricks, and then Google gets onto it, and then they outlaw it. But the thing that's never changed about Google or any search engine or even AI is if you're providing custom content. In other words, you're not just ripping off something from another page and just putting it on yours, so it's custom, that you continuously do that, and then people come on your page and stay on your page, then that's an indicator to Google that there's value there. And if you keep doing that, then Google is going to recognize that content, whether it's through putting the video up, whether it's through directing people to your page. And so that's how these people get found. Yes, podcasts are important, but they're really just a means to an end. At the end of the day, if we just switch to pure video next month, and then the following month it's, whatever it is, I've always said from the beginning of time, it doesn't matter if your ad is on toilet paper in public bathrooms. If you get clients off of it, you're going to be happy.
yeah.
And so that's what we focus on.
Well, and there was something else you said that I want to make sure people don't miss. You said that there were two types of people that were searching. There's a higher volume of the first type, which is just attorney near me. Lower volume of the second kind, but the second kind is a higher value lead. And I
Right.
think a lot of businesses measure the wrong thing. I ran into that. We had a client, I won't give the details on air, but I was having lunch with the GM one day, and he told me about who his most valuable clients were. Like, well, heck, I think we can change our ad strategy to attract those.
Right. Yeah.
And so we changed the ad strategy, the number of leads dropped. And all they did was complain about the number of leads dropping. Well, we track things all the way through to revenue, and their average time to close was, their average was about 60 days. And so we tracked through all the way when the revenue showed up, and we looked at what were the most profitable leads. The leads that we captured when we changed the ad parameters had more than double the average contract value, and the
Mhm.
total revenue from those leads was, I think, more than double. And it was so funny. We could never convince them. We actually showed them the things, and they're like, the leads went down. We feel like you did a bad job.
Yeah. I have to frame that with attorneys right up front, because one question I'll get is I'll be like, so how do I make a viral video? And I'm like, I mean, honestly, if you learn to ride a unicycle and you want to learn how to like juggle law books and then just pedal off the end of a pier, we'll video it and people will laugh at you and you'll have a viral video. Now, let me ask you this: what's more valuable? 50,000 views of your video or your podcast, but yet they're all over the world. They're in Indonesia, they're in South Africa, they're in Minnesota, and you're in New York City. So you're never going to get a client, but you've got 50,000 views. Or you get 50 views, but of those 50, they're all local. Of those 50, 15 of them call you and 8 of them hire you. Which is more valuable to you? And they'll always be like, well, the second, of course. Exactly. So I don't want you watching your numbers. I want you watching your conversion, your revenue, and your quality of client. And if you don't see an uptick with those, then come to me and we'll talk. And we frame that right up front with them, because this isn't about becoming viral. This is about becoming, finding your ideal client profile, bringing them through the door, pre-sold or 80% pre-sold, where you're not trying to song and dance sell them and lower your rates to match your competitors. They're coming to you, you're setting the price, and then they're just like, yeah, I want to work with you. I already respect you. You've already taught me. You've already helped me. And that's what this sort of marketing does, thought leadership marketing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's just so. I appreciate the way you frame that. I look back at that thing I ran into as a failure on my part to set proper expectations. And I didn't set it up on the front end, so they were excited on the back end when we doubled their revenue.
Right.
Foolish me, I thought they would just be happy with all the money. And but the
Yeah.
but I think a lot of business, so for business owners that are listening, I think one of the things you have to watch out for is just because your buddy down the street that has another business got a viral video, everybody's ego's boosted when they have a viral video. But the fundamental question is, okay, what did it do for your business? Did wonders for your ego. I'm sure that felt great. What did it do for your business?
Well, yeah, like, oh, congratulations. You got a $2,000 check from YouTube because a bunch of people watched one of your videos. But if one client signs up with you, your retainer is $10,000 and your hourly is $450, and you're going to make $25,000 off of them. And you're more focused on the $2,000 from YouTube than you are on the $25,000 from the client who fits your profile. You
Yeah.
just and attorneys, and again, this is why I like working with them, because like more emotional industries will be like, blank you, you don't tell me how to run my business. But like an attorney will be like, you're right. You're right. I will focus on that. And so
Yeah.
it's like you can get them to kind of, for the most part, I'm generalizing in a positive way. Not all attorneys are at that logical and pleasant, but generally speaking, that is the types of conversations that we get to have.
Yeah. No, and I think it's in their training. I think it's very much in their training. It's about solving problems, and they have more of a problem solving type training that gets them there. I'll tell you, there's one attorney whose marketing I admire and I'd love to meet. They're not a thought leadership attorney, but there's one attorney that runs some billboards, and every time I see his billboards, I'm like, I'd love to meet that guy one time. You know
Yeah.
which one I'm talking about?
Are you talking about the guy who used to be the weed lawyer? He used to have the dreadlocks.
Yep.
Dave Cromwell
Comey.
or something. Comey,
David
that's
Comey,
it.
the
Comey, there we
attorney that
go.
rocks.
Yeah. Yep. I know exactly. That's funny. I knew exactly who you were talking about.
Yeah. And that's, and kind of going back to the whole idea of solving tough problems, the way he went about solving it is, he has a memorable billboard. I mean, all I had to tell you is there's one attorney with billboards that I'd love to meet, and you immediately knew who I was talking about.
Yeah.
Um, but he's also, I think he's doing personal injury, and it's not family law or something like that.
Yeah. He started off with criminal because he used to be the guy like, hey, if you get caught smoking weed and you get in trouble, call me. But it's not a big deal in Austin anymore. They decriminalized it. But before that, that was his whole spiel was just like, hey, like, look at me. You know I can handle your case, right? Like that was his spiel. And I guess he's moved into personal injury, which a lot of guys do anyway.
Yeah. Well, I really like your approach on the thought leadership, and I love the fact that, like I said, you've solved a problem I don't know how to solve. It's a tough marketing problem, and I love your approach, 30 minutes a month to get a full month's worth of content. If you had some advice just for any business owner, not necessarily attorneys, about how to market their business, what they should consider that they're not presently doing, what would you
Well,
recommend?
this is what we try to do. We build backwards. So, most people try to build marketing frontwards. So they try to build it from their self. Who am I? What do I do? What do I have? And then they try to like get that message out there. But what we do is when we onboard our clients, we find out, tell us about your ideal client profile. And that doesn't just mean like, oh, I want divorces. What types of divorces? Oh, I want high asset divorces. What types of people? Oh, I want, men in their 40s with custody that's getting ugly and blah blah blah. Okay. So now we've niched down to who their client is. So you build the ideal customer profile, and then you build what we call the brand profile. So who are you genuinely? Not who do you want to be, what character do you want to have, not woohoo, I'm the greatest personal injury attorney this side of the Pecos River. Call me now, sort of like a approach to marketing, but like who are you really? Are you analytical? Are you warm? Are you? And let's take those two things and let's build a marketing approach around who you are in comparison to who your client is and the value that you can bring to that potential client. And when you build your marketing backwards that way, instead, so like destination backwards, it's a lot easier to hit a mark because a lot of people are just like, well, this is who I am, so let's just market me this way. And they're like, well, what are you going after? Whatever I can get. Well, when you go after everything, you get nothing. You
Yep.
know, so you have to build. That's what I would say is find who that ideal client is, or sub clients, or maybe there's 3 or 4 profiles, and then who are you, and how can you help those people specifically, and then build your marketing backwards from that.
That is sage advice. Dennis, this has been so awesome. I knew in the green room, I knew two things. One, it was going to be a fun conversation. And two, I knew we were going to run way over time. But I'm
And we didn't
excited.
even talk about all the stuff that we stopped talking about in the green room so we could talk about during this. So we
Yeah.
just, no worries. But
So how can people, so it's Dennis Meador, the Legal Podcast Network. How can people reach you?
um, LinkedIn is one way. Obviously, I try to be very active on LinkedIn. So just Dennis with 2 N's, Meadow, spelled like a meadow, but with an R on the end instead of a W. Plus, I imagine it's going to be wherever in the notes of, whatever outlet this is on. And then our website is the Ohio State University, the legal podcast network.com. You can visit us there. You can see we have a couple samples of our work. We're getting ready to kind of revamp it, some testimonials. My background and experience talks about like my first business at 14 and what I did, and then, kind of built up kind of from there and how I ended up here. Introduces you to some integral people on my team. I've got Like my post production guy has produced a Super Bowl commercial and produces regularly for the NFL and Major League Baseball. So like I've got major players who are, because of the remote work environment and because they bought into our vision, I'm able to provide a very, very high end, almost like if they were to go to MSNBC or Fox or whatever, that's the level of production that we're able to provide for a fraction of the cost. So go to our website, check that out, check out who we are, and there's something to fill out there, or connect with me on LinkedIn, and more than happy to have any discussion, be of help to whoever I can.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on Leaders and Legacies.
Absolutely. I've enjoyed it, my friend.